There was a time when the world was ruled not by knowledge, but by belief, when questions were answered with fear, and curiosity was a sin. The sky was mysterious, diseases were punishments, and the earth, people believed, was the center of everything. But then, something extraordinary happened. Humanity began to ask questions again. They began to look up and wonder. They began to experiment, to test, to challenge. And from that spark of curiosity, the greatest transformation in human history began: the scientific revolution. It didn't start with fanfare. It began quietly, in the minds of a few brave thinkers who dared to doubt what everyone else accepted as truth. These were people who looked at the heavens, the human body, the motion of planets, and saw not mystery, but patterns that could be understood, predictable, logical, and through that understanding they began to unlock the hidden laws of nature. Imagine living in a world where the stars were gods, where lightning was divine anger, and where the smallest disease could destroy entire cities because no one knew what caused it. That was the world before the scientific revolution. And then came people like Nicolaus Copernicus, a quiet mathematician who looked at the heavens and said, "What if the earth isn't the center at all?" It was a radical idea, almost dangerous, because questioning the order of the universe meant questioning the very powers that claimed to define it. But Copernicus planted the seed. His idea that the sun, not the earth, was the center of the solar system was like striking a match in a room full of darkness. That single spark inspired generations. Soon after, Galileo Galilei picked up his telescope and pointed it toward the sky. What he saw changed everything. He saw moons orbiting Jupiter, proof that not everything revolved around the earth. He saw imperfections on the moon, mountains, craters, evidence that even the heavens weren't perfect. And when he wrote about it, the world shook. Galileo wasn't just observing. He was proving that the universe obeyed laws, not legends. His discoveries challenged powerful institutions. Yet he stood firm, because for him, truth was not something decided by authority, it was discovered through evidence. And that belief became the beating heart of science itself. The scientific revolution was more than discoveries, it was a new way of thinking. A mindset that said, don't just believe, question. Don't just observe, experiment. Don't just accept, prove. It gave humanity permission to doubt, and that was revolutionary. Then came Johannes Kepler, who took Copernicus's idea and refined it with mathematics. He discovered that planets move not in perfect circles but in ellipses, a subtle truth that made the universe far more precise and beautiful. And then came Isaac Newton, the man who saw the universe as a grand machine, governed by invisible forces. One apple falling from a tree led him to a truth that united the heavens and the earth: gravity. Newton didn't just explain how things fell, he explained how planets moved, how tides shifted, how motion itself followed a universal law. For the first time, humanity could describe the cosmos with numbers. The language of mathematics became the key to understanding creation itself. Think about that for a moment. For thousands of years, people believed that only gods could understand or control the universe. But now, a human could look at the stars and say, I can calculate their paths. The fear of the unknown began to fade, replaced by the thrill of discovery. That shift, that courage to explore, became the foundation of modern science. The scientific revolution didn't just change astronomy or physics. It changed the very way humans saw themselves. We were no longer the center of the universe, we were explorers in it. We were part of a vast, intricate system governed by laws we could learn and understand. The human mind became a tool as powerful as any telescope or microscope. Soon the revolution spread beyond the stars. In medicine, Andreas Vesalius dissected the human body and mapped it like never before, proving that centuries of medical beliefs were wrong. William Harvey discovered how blood circulated, that the heart was a pump, not a mystery. For the first time, people realized that life itself followed natural laws, not supernatural ones. The scientific revolution ignited a hunger for truth that spread across Europe and then the world. Printing presses carried ideas faster than ever before. Books, diagrams, and discoveries moved from dusty laboratories to crowded cities, inspiring generations. The old world built on faith alone began to crumble, and a new world built on reason, evidence, and experiment began to rise. It was not an easy transition. Many of these scientists were mocked, silenced, even punished. Galileo was forced to recant his discoveries under threat of death. Yet even as he whispered, "And yet it moves," humanity moved with him, because once the truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. The power of the scientific revolution lies not in its inventions, but in its mindset. It taught us that progress is born from curiosity, that every why we ask brings us closer to the truth. It turned alchemists into chemists, astrologers into astronomers, and healers into doctors. It laid the foundation for every modern discovery: electricity, vaccines, airplanes, the internet, space exploration. All of it can trace its roots back to that daring era when humans decided to think differently. But the most profound change was within us. Before the revolution, humanity saw itself as small, fragile, dependent on fate. After it, we saw ourselves as capable thinkers, inventors, creators of our own destiny. The scientific revolution gave humanity its greatest gift, belief in the power of the human mind. Imagine the courage it took for those early scientists to stand against the world, to challenge centuries of tradition, to risk their lives for ideas. Their courage reminds us that truth often begins as heresy, that progress is never comfortable, and that the price of enlightenment is always paid by those who dare to question. Today, when we send spacecraft to Mars, cure diseases, or decode the human genome, we're continuing the same journey they began. Every experiment in a lab, every question asked by a child, every innovation that changes the world, all of it is the echo of the scientific revolution. Think of how far we've come. In just a few centuries, we've gone from believing the Earth was flat to mapping galaxies billions of light years away. From bleeding patients with leeches to performing heart transplants. From worshipping the stars to walking among them. The revolution that began in dusty observatories and candlelit studies transformed not just science, but the very meaning of what it means to be human. And yet, the true beauty of the scientific revolution is that it never ended. It continues every day, in every question, in every discovery. Science is not a collection of facts, it's a way of thinking. It's a flame passed from one generation to the next, burning brighter each time someone asks, why? That's what makes this turning point so extraordinary. It wasn't just about telescopes, equations, or experiments. It was about a shift in consciousness, a realization that we are capable of understanding the universe we live in, that knowledge is not forbidden fruit. It's the essence of being human. The revolution transformed not only how we see the cosmos, but how we govern ourselves. Rational thought gave rise to democracy, human rights, and the Enlightenment movements that believed if reason could explain nature, it could also improve society. The same curiosity that mapped the stars also built nations, invented machines, and inspired art. Science and creativity began to dance together, shaping the modern world. Today, when we hold a smartphone, launch a satellite, or peer into the quantum realm, we're standing on the shoulders of those giants: Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, and countless others whose names history may have forgotten but whose courage lit the path. Their story is not just history, it's a reminder of what we can achieve when we dare to think differently. Because the scientific revolution wasn't just about discovering the universe, it was about discovering ourselves, our potential, our curiosity, our relentless drive to know more. And that drive, that spark of wonder, is what makes humanity unstoppable. We still live in its light. Every time we cure a disease, launch a rocket, or solve a mystery of nature, we're continuing that same journey that began centuries ago, a journey from darkness into understanding. The story of the scientific revolution is the story of human awakening, a moment when we stopped fearing the unknown and started exploring it. It reminds us that knowledge is freedom, that curiosity is power, and that the greatest revolutions begin not with weapons but with questions. So the next time you look at the stars, remember this: once, humanity looked up and saw gods. Now, we look up and see possibilities. The scientific revolution changed the world not because it gave us answers, but because it taught us how to find them. It turned our gaze from the heavens to the laboratory, from faith to evidence, from myth to measurement. It gave us the courage to replace fear with understanding and superstition with science. And perhaps, the most beautiful truth of all, the revolution never truly ended. Every discovery we make today is part of that same unfolding story. The story of human curiosity, endless, fearless, unstoppable. Because in the end, the greatest discovery of the scientific revolution was not the laws of motion, or gravity, or the planets. It was the discovery of ourselves, of what the human mind can do when it refuses to stop asking why. That, more than anything, is why the scientific revolution was, and still is, the greatest turning point in human history.